Hi, welcome to Chard Review. On an island dominated by dinosaurs, two young friends struggle to survive while trying to figure out what to do to teleport back home. Today we will recap the story of the 2014 movie Dinosaur Island in an elite school in the United States. The teacher gives a class about the different types of rock formations and Gloria as the most interested student in the whole class. Her numerous questions about the subject end up irritating some of her classmates who sneer at the girl behind her back. Lucas Winton is the only member of the class. He sympathizes with the girl because, like her, he is also interested in geology. The boy is drawing dinosaurs in his notebook when his teacher interrupts him and, seeing that Lucas is not paying attention in class, decides to embarrass him. The man orders the boy to go to the blackboard and explain the subject to the rest of the class. However, to his surprise, Lucas has an in-depth knowledge of rocks and manages to give a beautiful lesson, leaving his teacher baffled. At the end of the day, Lydia is waiting for her son outside the school and asks him to get into the car because she needs to make preparations for her trip. His father lives abroad and Lucas will travel to see him. But before he goes to pack his bags, the boy is taken to the house of his paternal grandmother, who is currently in a sanatorium. Since her former husband is no longer in the country, Lydia has offered to help him prepare the old house to be sold. While his mother answers the phone, Lucas takes the opportunity to investigate the place and comes across a library. Leafing through one of the books, the young man discovers that his grandmother loved dinosaurs and becomes interested in studying these animals further. However, his mother informs him that all those books will be donated so that the house can be sold. Before leaving, the boy finds a crystal which was hidden inside a small box and decides to take it along for the trip. The next day, the boy goes to take the plane. But during the flight a dense fog begins to rise in the skies and a storm is formed. The pilot reports that extreme turbulence is on the way and Lucas's crystal begins to emit a very strong light. After that, it doesn't take long before the aircraft disappears, as if it had been teleported away due to the accident. Lucas loses consciousness for a few minutes in. When he wakes up, he realizes that he has ended up on a mysterious island. The young man starts screaming for help, hoping to find any more survivors, but no one answers. Looking at the ground, Lucas finds his crystal and wonders how it got there. After putting the stone in his pocket, he walks towards the forest and soon comes across bizarre monsters that start chasing him. The raptors run after the boy and manage to surround him. These animals begin to attack Lucas and grab his shirt, but at that moment a young girl appears and distracts creatures so that the boy can escape. Katie then asks Lucas to remove his shirt as the raptors are after it. After throwing the shirt toward the dinosaurs, the pair manages to escape in. The girl takes the newcomer to her treehouse. Now that they are safe, Lucas borrows his new friend's phone as he plans to call his parents and ask for help. However, Katie reveals that there is no signal in that jungle. The young woman explains that it is mating season, and so the dromaeosaurus wanted the blue shirt with the goal of wearing it to attract a mate, frightened that he will never be able to return home. Lucas asks where they are and Katie reveals that after years of study she has been conducting there, she has arrived at the theory that the island is an isolated place which is not shown on the map and is not present at any specific time. The place is like a parallel dimension, despite being lost there alone for a long time. The young woman sees this situation as an incredible opportunity to further her studies. She is passionate about paleontology and considers it a great privilege to be able to live in a time when she can study dinosaurs that are still alive. After hearing all this, As our explanation, Lucas comes to the conclusion that Katie has lost her mind after spending so much time on that island and decides to go out alone to look for his plane, ignoring the young woman's advice about never going out at night. As soon as the boy leaves the cabin, he comes across a giant spider, but he tries not to be intimidated and begins to think of a plan of escape from that macabre island. However, upon hearing the roars coming from the middle of the forest, Lucas is startled and Katie manages to convince him to wait until the next day to go out in search of his aircraft. Just as the pair returns to the treehouse, a pterodactyl appears and captures the giant spider that was caught in a web it had built between two trees. The sun is already setting when the pair is visited by Mimos, a Sinornithosaurus capable of reproducing any sound that hears, including the roar of a T-Rex. After giving the animal a snack, Katie hands over her journal so that Luke can catch up on all the discoveries she has made during her years on that island. When he reads the logbook, the boy discovers that Katie was born in 1940 and finds it strange that the girl is so young. Since he lives in 2014, the paleontologist then explains that from time to time ships appear on the island and bring supplies. The curious thing is that the airplanes also carry newspapers and merchandise from different eras. This explains the fact that two people from different eras are gathered there. While Katie prepares dinner, Lucas takes the opportunity to investigate the cabin and finds several glass jars containing small luminous creatures. He becomes curious to know what those mysterious animals are in. While watching them closely, is surprised by the sudden attack of a large insect. Startled, the boy attacks him with Katie's journal and ends up crushing the Arthropleura, which looks more like a giant centipede. When she sees the dead creature, Katie is saddened as she had intended to study it while it was still alive. She says that she found the egg a few weeks ago while walking in the forest and it must have hatched recently. Therefore, that animal was still a baby. While observing the creature's body, the scientist is amazed as she had never seen an Arthropleura so closely. Suddenly the insect starts to move and to avoid being bitten. Katie also needs to attack it and uses her notebook to smash the animal's head after dinner. Lucas still doesn't believe in his friend's theory about time travel, and Katie decides to show him some evidence. The young woman takes some newspapers that she found in the wreckage of different planes that crashed on the island and shows that they date back to different times. Lucas claims that those are just old newspapers until he comes across an encyclopedia that was published in 2040 in a time that even he has not lived yet. Katie reveals that TV and radio sets do not work on the island. So the girl must create her own distractions. One of her favorite hobbies is reading the letters that arrive on airplanes, and she separates her favorites to read over and over again when she is bored. After reading one of the letters to Luke, Katie arranges a place for him to sleep and reads him a beautiful love poem while he falls asleep. The next morning, an earthquake occurs and Lucas's crystal begins to glow. Memos realizes that something wrong is happening and tries to wake Katie, but the young girl does not awaken when he hears the noises caused by the tremor. Lucas gets up startled. Asks his friend what is going on. Noticing dense clouds being formed, the young woman becomes excited as she realizes that the mist is bringing new supplies. Suddenly, a cargo plane emerges from the skies and Luke worries about the passengers who will surely end up injured due to the crash. However, Katie claims that it never has anyone on board the aircraft, and Lucas wonders how he and the girl ended up in that place. That morning, the pair walks through the forest towards the plane to collect supplies and comes across a group of iguanodons. Katie states that those are vigorous. Dinosaurs are her favorite, and they are both amazed when a small dinosaur approaches. After contemplating the beauty of those animals, The two friends continue on their way, and Katie explains that everything on that island came from another place or another time. Even the dinosaurs. They were attracted by a mist that appears frequently but unpredictably when they arrive at the crash site. The youngsters manage to open the cargo compartment, and while Katie searches the place, Lucas delights in the chocolate bars he found in one of the boxes. Suddenly, a group of native children start to surround the aircraft, and the two friends end up being captured. The youngsters are forced to follow them through the forest amidst the most bizarre creatures. On the way to their village, one of the young men approaches. A beautiful flower and frightening eyes come out of it. Suddenly, the boy disappears and the group begins to search for him. A terrible smell begins to invade the forest, and Katie notices carnivorous flowers in the treetops. At that moment, plant roots approach to capture them, and while the natives try to eliminate them, Katie and Lucas take the opportunity to escape. However, they soon realize that they are surrounded by the carnivorous plants and are swept away by the vines. The pair was about to be devoured when their pursuers approached and destroy the flower. They then tie up the youngsters and take them once again as prisoners. After a few hours of locking, the group reaches the village where the humans use the lost aircraft as homes and forcibly tame the forest animals. On the outskirts of the village, there are numerous cells where animals are imprisoned, and the two friends end up in one of these prisons. Hours later, a new fog storm breaks out and the natives gather in front of the phenomenon to await the new supplies that are arriving that night. 80 has already given up hope of escaping alive, but Lucas promises that he will find a way to get them out of there. Seeing the boy sitting on the ground with his small crystal in his hands, another prisoner approaches and claims that this stone possesses magical powers. As he is a great science enthusiast, Lucas does not believe what this stranger is saying until Ernest starts whistling in the courts. Crystal begins to emit a strong light, producing a small cloud around it. Suddenly an ancient coin appears on the scene and the boy is amazed to find that it was manufactured in 1790. The man then reveals that those crystals are known as Sing Sing stones, and it was those minerals that brought everything that exists on that island. He adds that there are countless giant crystals that lie far away from there. Through them, his people managed to produce a mist that took them back home. Upon hearing this, Lucas immediately becomes interested in what Ernest has to say and asks how to get to this place. Then the man reveals that the place is very dangerous and surrounded by 2 mountains of fire. However, this is the only way to escape from that island. To get there, he must first escape from that cage, and the prisoner claims it is possible to do this if the youngsters climb the wooden bases and make it to the top. After waking, Katie Lucas helps the girl escape and then enlists Ernest's help to climb up. Before leaving, the paleontologist decides to free the dinosaurs that have been trapped because she can't leave them in that place. The young woman unties the rope and opens the door so that they can escape. At this time, the natives hear a strange noise and soon realize that they have escaped. To avoid being captured again, the two friends decide to hitch a ride on one of the pterodactyls and managed to escape. Since those animals are still very young, Katie is afraid because she believes that it is the first time that animal is flying, and this increases the probability that they will suffer a serious accident. During the flight, Lucas blames the girl for what happened and says he will find a way to get home with or without her help. Katie then admits that she didn't want the boy to leave because he is her first human friend since she arrived on the island. Therefore, the young woman cannot bear the thought of being alone again. After saying this, she realizes that she is being very selfish and, besides that, she will help Lucas find his way back. The boy is trying to understand what Ernest was saying when he talked about the mountains of fire, and just then he spots two volcanoes. Then he realizes that this is where the teleportation crystals are, that will be able to take him home immediately. Lucas tries to get the pterodactyl to change its course, but as a consequence, the trio ends up falling into the forest. Now the youngsters will have to walk to the volcano, which is 14 kilometers away. Since she didn't take part in the conversation Lucas had with Ernest, Katie is confused and asks why he wants to reach the volcanoes. So the boy takes the crystal from his pocket and begins to whistle, demonstrating that the mist is produced from it. Suddenly the stone begins to emit a strong light and a butterfly is transported to that world. Impressed by the discovery, Katie claims that she had a crystal identical to that one and realizes that this is how she and Lucas ended up on that island. The boy's idea is to reach the volcano where, according to Ernest, there are hundreds of these crystals and use the mist produced by them to return to his world while they are planning their next steps in detail. The youngsters are surprised by the sudden arrival of a colossal arthropleura, which begins to chase them across the island at high speed. During their escape, the duo comes across a new monster and is surrounded with nowhere to go. The two friends hug each other as they await their end, but the little pterodactyl appears to save them and captures the giant centipede. Believing that the two teenagers are part of his family, the young flying dinosaur decides to follow them. However, shortly after a T-Rex approaches the little animal has to flee. Therefore, Katie and Lucas become the targets and run diagonally through the forest in an attempt to slow down the monster. They set off toward a band of Stegosaurus in order to throw off the predator, but the plan does not work as expected and the T-Rex is still hungry for meat. The monster chases the pair until it reaches a ship, but the youngsters manage to escape its clutches by climbing onto the wreck. Just then, Mimos approaches and uses his amazing ability to imitate a loud roar and scare the T-Rex away. Now that they are safe, the youngsters realize that they have ended up in a valley filled with debris and very close to volcanoes. On the way to their final destination, Katie and Lucas encounter a group of raptors and must hide. On the other hand, Mimos ends up being seen by the predators and realizing that his life is in danger, tries to intimidate them with his roar. However, this time their strategy does not work and the trio is pursued. They run towards the volcano and the lava takes care of eliminating some of the predators, but new members of the gang appear and continue the chase. The youngsters then hide in a hole they find in a rock and the hunt only comes to an end when the raptor is buried by several rocks. They fall on his head. After a long journey, Katie and Lucas finally find the crystals that will allow them to return home. The boy believes that it is that cave that is drawing everything to the island, and is convinced that that rock formation is a result of the seismic activity that occurs there. The vibration caused by an earthquake activates the Sing Sing stones, and they teleport creatures and objects onto the island. However, the pair can't wait for another earthquake to happen before returning home, so Lucas takes a glass jar that Katie carried in her purse and runs his fingers around the opening to reproduce vibrations similar to that emitted by seismic activity. In order to make the sound even more similar, Katie puts some water in the container and Lucas manages to activate the crystals. Suddenly, one of the raptors invades the cave and snatches up Memos. Seeing the little dinosaur at the mercy of the predator, Lucas goes into despair and ends up knocking over the jar. To save him, Katie uses her blue-covered journal as bait and lures the raptor into the abyss. After getting rid of the threat, they try to revive Memos, but he is unable to survive. Upon seeing the little Sinornithosaurus dead, the girl cannot hold back her tears, for that was her closest friend since she arrived on the island. Frustrated and hopeless, Lucas decides to accompany his friend back to the treehouse, because now that the vial is broken, he knows he will not be able to achieve the resonance needed to activate the crystals at that instant. Unexpectedly, Memos wakes up and plays a sound that activates the Sing Sing stone. Suddenly a heavy mist begins to be produced and the portal opens. Lucas is about to go through, but Katie refuses to go without her. Larry, the young woman, tries to grab it, but is unable to reach her notebook. Her friend then pulls her close to the portal and asks her friend to forget about those notes. However, just as the girl was about to be teleported back home, she decides to return to get her diary, for she knows that without it, no one will believe her findings. That being the case, Katie says goodbye to her friend, but promises that she will be fine and will enter the portal soon after him. After being taken back to his world, Lucas wakes up in a hospital room and his parents are right next to his bed. The young man becomes agitated and says that he had a very strange dream. He starts to tell his parents what happened, but they tried to calm him down. For the couple, their son is just confused about having been in a plane crash, but the boy still has doubts about what he experienced and wonders if in fact it was all just a dream. When his parents leave the room, Lucas realizes that his grandmother, Catherine, is in the living room waiting to speak with him. As far as the boy remembers, his grandmother had been committed to the sanatorium many years ago for her crazy theories, however. The woman gives him her diary and Lucas realizes that she was Katie from the island, which means that everything he experienced there was real. By going back for her journal, Katie altered her entire future and made a strong contribution to the scientific studies of her time. Now she is awarded the Nobel Prize in Science and finally realizes her teenage dream. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe for more movie review. See you next time. The people keep dinosaurs and monsters as pets. Chard review.